All right, I guess that's about 2 minutes, and yeah, let's jump right in. I think looks like Robert has the first note or first topic. He is not here. Do we want to discuss it or move it to the bottom? It's the question is new meeting notes doc for the new year. I suppose this is. I suppose there are some trade-offs. Maybe the doc right now is 135 pages, so maybe it takes a little bit long to load for people, or hard to navigate. Is that maybe that's one of the questions, or?
Traditionally, every year we've done this. So Robert and I have worked on the SIG for many years, and usually in the new year, if the doc is large like this one is, it's typical operating procedures to create a new one, just reference this one and the last one and cut over to a new doc for the new year. I don't think there's any problem with that unless people really want to maintain this doc forever.
I'm not sure who owns this doc. I guess anybody. I don't know if there's somebody in particular that's supposed to create another doc.
We can just assign it to Robert.
Okay, and then we'll just copy this over, maybe to that doc. Okay. If somebody could make the assignment in the doc, I'd appreciate it. Thanks. So next topic is actually from myself and David. David, do you want to take it, or just a quick?
Sure. So there have been some discussions, both between Daniel and I and the community, about how we might use webhooks in order to create a more generic provider. Daniel and I have been looking at how to do this in particular for, so each of us have written SSH providers, which we use for bare metal and VM environments. And one of the problems that we've seen with bare metal environments is that once you've created or provisioned a machine, there is no way to delete the machine in a way that's completely clean. And so by using a webhook, it might be possible to delegate the creation and deletion of resources to some external mechanism, which is able to properly clean up resources. And so you could imagine supporting more bare metal environments by using this extension mechanism. So this is just like one small part of, I think, a proposal that Vince had put up for, or maybe it was Tim St. Clair, about using webhooks as an extension mechanism for Cluster API. So we've been working on a proposal for that. I don't know how soon we would have. I mean, actually, I'm not sure on the timelines for this, honestly. I would like not to get too far ahead of ourselves, because I think there's a lot of people who have been thinking about how we should use webhooks within Cluster API, and I would like to get some feedback sooner rather than later.
I think it's a great idea, but I think this blends into the next topic too, is like, when are we actually going to cut V1 Alpha 1? And does this make the cut, or is this beyond the cut point? Because we've kind of punted V1 Alpha 1 in perpetuity since early fall. Is that fair? So I think it's a question of whether or not, what is the criteria that we want to add this, when do we want to add this feature, and what is the criteria for getting it in? Within other sub-projects, we have well-defined deliverables for a given time frame, Cluster API has been a little bit more free-flowing, but I think in the new year, we want to get a little bit more locked down about what we're trying to deliver and when, so that way folks who are actually trying to deliver providers or implementations can rely upon this within a reasonable time frame.
I think that makes sense. And I think that at the point that we're at with the planning and implementation, it's premature to talk about releases of this feature. I mean, we're just not even at that point.
I think writing up a proposal and putting it into the main Cluster API repo as a sort of markdown KEP style thing seems totally reasonable. I don't think it needs to percolate beyond this subproject because it's not germane to a broader audience. So that makes a ton of sense to me. And then we can bike shit on the details of that particular KEP within the SIG.
Makes sense.
Go ahead, Justin.
I mean, this would be a feature of a different provider implementation, right? So it doesn't necessarily block the cluster API itself going to, well, even to stable, right?
Well, it'd be in the core. This would be implementation in the core. Well,
Okay.
it'd basically be providing the webhook mechanism in the core.
So the current actuator interface we would have a way to do that via a webhook.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess we need to see the design then.
So the reason you need that is the idea of the webhook is that it observes machines, and machines are cluster API objects. So the webhook is in response to a machine, but it has to be able to decode the provider specific portion of the machine spec. So there's a portion of this code that has to be in common. But then
Sorry.
I think having a default mechanism that allows you to provide webhooks in a secure fashion. Here's the kicker. Being able to auto-generate the webhooks in a secure mechanism is hard-ish, right? Unless you do it like a fake Lambda type of deal with the 12,000 different ways that people have for doing fake Lambda things, right? So
we could also split cluster API, I guess, into cluster API and cluster API-commons, right? So this would go into commons. Like, I feel like the implementations are sort of existence proofs, and we want them to exist before we are willing to declare the cluster API itself to be anything along the road to stable. But the alternate implementations shouldn't necessarily hold up the core API itself. I'm just trying to find a way to like not unblock the API from other things. Like, I also want to like experiment with like embedding, like having another object that is created underneath the machine, right? So like, but I don't think that would ever hold up any of the implementations or any of the API itself. It's just a different strategy for implementing things.
I think just working on a proposal that we can bike shit on makes a ton of sense, because that disambiguates like when we want to do it and how we would do it, and the different options there. But my major concern is like we need to actually get a fully legit cut of V1 Alpha 1, which has all the things that we say we're going to do. Because right now, my general concern is fragmentation of this code base and what is quote unquote V1 Alpha 1 and what are the other providers doing, and how do we guarantee consistency across all the providers, right? I have a general larger concern with that right now.
I agree. I think this is orthogonal. This is more of a sort of like a status update in terms of like what we're doing, so that others are aware. But I also agree that I have real concerns about the consistency of operation of different providers and also their implementation. And I think if we're going to make alpha within this quarter, that is the priority.
Okay, I think that wraps up that topic. Tim, you have the next one.
I pretty much hit it with conversing about this one, which is just, when are we going to do a hard march against V1 Alpha 1 and like try to burn that down? Because right now we would like to get a release out for our providers that folks can rely upon. It has proper version semantics. I don't know if Robbie is actually driving that to completion, or if that's the plan from because Robbie's the main sub-project lead for Cluster API. So I don't know what the status is or the burn down time frame is for V1 Alpha 1 cut.
I'm just looking, there are 2 different tickets enumerating issues for this.
The last time I went through the existing tickets and milestones, a lot of them were referencing some very old tickets related to the initial kind of migration to the Cluster API repo itself for the GCP provider implementation. So I think the first thing that needs to be done is really go through and scour the backlog, clean it up, and kind of actually make sure that we have a decent tracking of the outstanding issues that we have. And off the top of my head, what I can think of is we need to be able to have an upgrade story for the CRDs that we publish, which is going to require us to migrate to a 113 base for KubeBuilder to be able to build and create webhooks for the conversions. And then, anything else kind of related to that. I think we still have some potential issues with maybe some defaulting and validation as well, but I know Justin was working on some of that.
I'm going to assign this to Robbie to try and get an update for next week. I don't think we can answer this all in detail here because there's a lot of scrubbing that needs to go on through the backlog.
One thing I had was the Kubernetes 1.12 update. Is anything holding the PR up? It has been almost a month. This would help with like starting to work on webhooks because it also updates KubeBuilder and controller runtime and tools.
I suspect the main holdup has been just KubeCon and the holidays, Vince.
Yeah. Now I'm saying like if anyone of the approvers can look at it, that would be nice. Justin, I'm looking at you.
I will take a look. I think I've been experimenting with Vigo, so I've been running with whatever the latest is, and it definitely works. So I will have a look, and I don't know if anyone has any objections in terms of compatibility, but I guess we have to update. So
thank you.
And are those all the topics for today? Looks like it. I guess going once, going twice. Okay. I think we covered all the topics for today. We've got a couple of action items, both for Robbie, who's not able to attend today's meeting. And I think, people's eyes on the 112 upgrade PR, which is linked in the doc. And I think that's it. Thanks, everybody. And Happy New Year. And have a great rest of your week.
Bye, folks.